first of all deal with this. Why, like for example, for Richard Nixon, and why is donating money to a candidate's campaign, why is that potentially something that could be a problem? Why do we care how much money somebody donates to a campaign? The more money they donate and the more money they spend on politics, the more power they have. Let's say, for example, we got over here Fry and we got over here Cooper, okay? And Cooper is a multimillionaire, all right? And Fry is just a regular person, okay? You're like the rest of us, right? And you make a pretty good salary, but not nearly as much as Cooper over here, the multimillionaire. Let's say that Cooper, every time I want to run for office and get elected, Cooper provides me with $2 million for my campaign, right? And Fry donates to my campaign too. She's like, I always like Scalise. And she donates $20 to my campaign. Who has more influence over what I'm going to do? Cooper does, because that $2 million will make up a huge chunk of the amount of money I spend on my campaign. So without her help, I have difficulty winning. Right? Whereas if I lose the $20 that Fry gave me, I'd be like, that's no big deal. Okay? So that was an issue. All right? They're worried about some people having undue influence. But there's another problem too. Richard Nixon creates a major issue here. Richard Nixon, anybody know, you familiar with the Watergate scandal? Where he literally has people break into the Watergate Hotel to bug the Democratic Party's headquarters. Okay? Now, here's the thing. People started asking about that. They're like, oh my gosh, what else is Nixon up to? And come to find out, Richard Nixon had taken money from people that were supposed to be campaign contributions, and he spent it on illegal activities. He would pay people out of a lot of that money that was supposed to be campaign money. He would pay people to do illegal things like wiretap the Democratic Party headquarters. And people said, oh my gosh, that's not what that money's intended for. Imagine if you contributed money to a political candidate and you found out they were using it for something, some ill purpose. You'd probably be pretty frustrated with that, right? Because of Richard Nixon, Congress said maybe we need to pass a law creating some restrictions, some more restrictions about this. Question, Tama? Mm-hmm. Right, because they don't read the fine print. Right. And by the way, right now, what he's doing, like you can set up, it's almost like he's setting up a GoFundMe account. Okay. Now, in political campaigns, here's what Congress passed, the law they passed, the Federal Election Campaign Act. Okay, to make sure that this campaign money was not being used in the incorrect fashion and that money wasn't going to corrupt politics. This law did several things. One, it required you disclose where you got the money and how you spent it. If you were a political candidate, you had to tell where you got your money from, okay, and how you spent that money, right? You had to account for where you got the money from and how you spent it. So, if Kaiser gives me $500, I have to say specifically, Anna Kaiser gave me $500 on this date, and you have to record that information. And then you have to specifically say, how did you spend that money? Okay? And so what you bring in and what you spend, those dollar amounts have to add up. They have to match up and be the same. Right? By the way, where do campaigns end up spending the bulk of their cash? What is it? Media, advertising. You're going to find that most campaigns, probably 40 to 50% of their budget goes towards campaigns. What if I told you this year that Joe Biden spent approximately $600 million on advertisements? That's a lot of money. Okay. Literally, you could buy like major sports franchises with that kind of cash. Wowzers. All right. So look, the first thing it did, disclosure. You had to tell where you got the money and how you spent it. Okay. Second thing about this law, there were limits put in place on how much money a group or a person could contribute to your campaign. Okay. There were specific limits put in place about how much money that a person or group could give to a campaign. That way, the Coopers of the world who have a lot of money, they're limited, they're capped. Even if Cooper's like, but I've got $20 million I could give your campaign. And I'm like, Cooper, the law says you can only give X amount, and that's it. All right. That way, poor people like Fry over here doesn't feel like that she's completely exorbitant out of reach there. Okay. And Cooper can only have so much influence over me directly. All right. So there were limits on about what an individual or an interest group could give to a candidate or campaign. Okay. So this law says you have to tell where you got the money, how you spent it. There are limits put in place specifically about what you could give to a campaign. And the third aspect of this, it established something called the Federal Election Commission, the FEC. Their job is to enforce election laws, campaign finance laws specifically. The FEC monitors campaign finance and they punish you if you're violating the laws. If you're misusing campaign funds, if you're not accounting for things the way you should be, you can get fined or even imprisoned. Right? A couple of years ago, there was a guy named John Edwards who ran for president. He was a senator in North Carolina, and when he ran for office, he lost early on the presidential primaries, but later it was found out that he was flying around his mistress to different campaign stops in the country, and he was using campaign money to do it. Oof. Oh, it was even worse. He was cheating on his wife while she had cancer. Oh, yeah. Right? He was actually charged with several campaign finance law violations. And look, they found him not guilty, but only because she technically was working for the campaign before they started having an affair. So they said you could justify it as a campaign-related expense, that she was actually on the job. She was working. Working. Oh, narrow escape for John Edwards there. All right. One other thing about this law that's particularly relevant. This law said that unions and businesses could not give money to candidates or campaigns. Okay? They could not give directly to candidates or campaigns because they said, look, business corporations have access to a whole lot of money. Same thing with labor unions. And it wouldn't be fair, like let's say over here, Elena is the CEO of AT&T, and her buddy back there, Armstrong, is the CEO of Apple. And they have access to tons of cash that small groups don't have access to. And they're like, hey, we don't like that. That makes us very uncomfortable. So unions and corporations were specifically banned from giving money to candidates and campaigns directly. Okay? By the way, anytime you put rules and restrictions in place, what do people in groups always try to find? Always try to find loopholes. Okay? Now, before we get to the loopholes and things like that, let me show you how a lot of this information is cataloged right now. If you are really nerdy like me, you can go to this website. It's called opensecrets.org. Okay? Now, if you click right here on menu and go to donor lookup, right, you can literally search for anybody in the country about what they've donated to a candidate or campaign. You can look up individuals. You can look up groups. We're going to look up individuals first. Ooh, like here's an example. Okay? Let's put in Scalise. And let's go through West Virginia, Mountain Mama. Take me home, country roads. Look at this. My brother is giving out money. It tells you the category. He gave money to a candidate, his name, his zip code, occupation, the date. He gave $1,000 to Joe Biden. Right? In 2010, he gave $500 to Joe Manchin. He gave money to a political action committee, the American College of Cardiology, and that was in 2018. Look, 2020, there's another. He spent an awful lot of money on politics. I feel like Christmas presents better be good this year. Okay, it's a good thing he'll probably never listen to this. Now, I don't know who Molina Scalise is, but she is in West Virginia as well, and she's given money. She gave money to Tally Sargent in 2018, right? And my brother gave money to Shelley Moore Capito back in 2010. So you can do little donor lookups. Oh, let's do Scalise. I know this one too, in South Carolina, because I got an uncle and cousins, and they probably give money too. Oh, look at this. Here is my cousin, who I don't even, that's not true. He's not a general contractor. He gave $1,000 to Lindsey Graham. This is my aunt. She doesn't have a job, but her husband, my uncle, does have a job. So they're giving money too. They haven't given anything recently, though. That's probably because I forgot they moved to Florida. Let's check that out. Of what? Yes, he's the senator in South Carolina. He just won a re-election. He's not a very well-liked guy if you're a liberal. Oh, that's my uncle right there. He gave money, $500 to the Republican National Committee. He must be getting like a little cheap in his old age there because like he wouldn't in the old days, he wouldn't think twice about giving money to different people. Now, this even gets famous people too. Watch this here. Winfrey? Oprah. Do you think Oprah gives money to politics? Oh yeah. Oprah. Look, she gave money to Obama, Cory Booker, Democratic Party of Ohio. I mean, she's giving money left and right, man. Of course, these are a little bit older, and this goes back to the 1990s. So Oprah's giving away a lot of cash. I wonder if she's giving away money. Actually, it says only display. That's only 20 records on this one. But you can also do what's really funny. Uh, you can do zip codes. Ooh, you got any zip codes? 25545. What's that, Ona? Let's take a look. See. Let's see here. Ah, I don't know who Doug Nip is, but he gave $1,800 to the Association of KFC Franchisees. All right, that's a group out there. It's a real group. Okay. Robert Patton gave money to Elliot Maynard. That was in 2010. I'm gonna go back and make this just a 2020 cycle and see what happens. Oh, there we go. It's a little bit easier here. Linda Childers, I had her son in class. At least I'm pretty sure that's it. Wade Midkiff, he owns the hotel, the used to be a Holiday Inn there in Barboursville. He gave money to Carol Miller. Ooh, man. Look at this. All these people. This guy, his children went to here to Cabell Midland. He gave money to Capito. Oh, man. People give money left and right. Yeah. And you can look up specific names of people too. Oh, man. Anybody else we want to look up? It's kind of creepy in a way, but at the same time, how many of y'all ever Facebook stalk people? Hmm. Yeah. And so it's the same thing. Now, when you start looking at the campaigns, like for example, the presidential campaign, okay, Joe Biden, here's what he spent. Look at this right here. He raised $937 million. Okay, that's a lot of money, and he spent 775 million of it. Right? Great question. What happens to the rest? You can use it for future campaigns. Which do you think Joe Biden plans to use it again in 4 years? You better believe it. All right. Now, if you don't want to use it for a future campaign, you can give it to other political candidates and groups. You can give it to charities, but you don't get to keep it. Okay. You don't get to pocket that. Now, here's some interesting things too. Once again, the expenditures. This is what we were talking about earlier. Biden dropped 600 million. His campaign dropped 600 million on media buys. Right, that's a lot of money. Okay, look at this. They spent just 28, or excuse me, they spent 28 million. They spent $28 million on fundraising alone. Literally, if I just had $1 million, I'm pretty sure I could retire yesterday. Right, y'all wouldn't see me again. I'd be like, have a nice senior year, guys. All right. They tell you the people they buy from, the companies that they buy from, the vendors they buy stuff from. For example, the Biden campaign, what are they buying from Google? Ads. Same thing. And if you know they're buying from Google, you know they're also buying from Facebook. All right. Because your parents and grandparents have ruined Facebook. All right. That's where the old people hang out. All right. So they're paying money for ad space on there. Okay. But it's not just Biden. Like you look at Trump. Let's take a look at him. 2020 election cycle here for the Donald. Trump didn't. He had a bit of a problem here too. He raised almost 600 million and spent almost all of it, but he is at a deficit. Biden raised and spent more than 300 million more dollars than he did. And same thing, source of the funds. They tell you that. By the way, presidential candidates, they don't take money from groups because they don't want anybody to say that you're owned by the special interest groups. Their source of their funds comes from individuals. So anything more than $200 is considered a large contribution. Anything under than $200, a small contribution. You can self-finance. You can use your own money on this, but Trump only spent $8,000 of his own money on this. Yeah, he may not have a lot to spend on it. Okay. Now, let me show you something else here too. All right. Let's go to this guy. I want to show you Thom Tillis. He was a Republican in North Carolina. All right. And he was in a tight election race. Okay. And this time around, he raised $21 million and spent $18 million. All right. That's a lot of money for a Senate seat. Now, here's what's even better. You can look at the geography. Notice where all the money's coming from. Look, he got $4 million from North Carolina. Okay. But he's also getting money from the rest of the country. Why are people from the rest of the country sending money to this guy in North Carolina who's in a tight Senate race? What is it? Why? Why is it important to them to win that seat? They got to control the Senate. And they're like, Republicans know they can't afford to lose many seats. And so Republicans from around the country are like, we got to help our guy here in North Carolina. Great question. And the answer is there's still Republicans in Texas. There are Republicans who want to see Thom Tillis win. Okay? There are people in California who want to see him win. Now, his opponent, let's look him up, Cal Cunningham. All right, Cal Cunningham probably would have won if he hadn't. Remember, he's the one that was sexting a woman that was not his wife, and that was released like 2 weeks before the election. Okay, now look at this. Cal Cunningham raised and spent $45 million to lose. Right, that is a crap ton of money to lose. Gosh, how would you feel if you lost that race? And you can look at any of the House district race, like let's just say District 8 in this particular instance. You had a Republican incumbent who won, and he's still spending $3 million to win that race. Okay? So you look at any of these files, and they're going to tell you specifically where they go. How about this one? Mitch McConnell. Okay? Mitch McConnell, who is the senator in Kentucky, he's also the Senate Majority Leader. All right? And you're going to see in this one, he raised $55 million. Right? This is the most I've ever seen like somebody like who didn't self-finance actually spent on a political campaign. And remember, $55 million, he spent only $43 million though, which means what's he planning to do in 6 years? Run again if he's still alive. All right? The geography, and this one's even crazier. He's a senator in Kentucky. And out of that 55 million, only 3.18 came from Kentucky. Look at these other places. Florida, Georgia, Texas, California. Look, Californians spent more money getting Mitch McConnell reelected than Mitch McConnell's home state did. Hey, if you were somebody going against Mitch McConnell in an election, how would you use this information against him? He's saying he's being funded by people outside of Kentucky. Hey, the people of Kentucky don't like Mitch McConnell that much. It's the out-of-staters, people like Californians and Texans and Floridians. Notice that West Virginia even gave him, I don't know who's giving money here, but I'm like, Lord have mercy, stop it. All right. Expenditures, you're going to see for Mitch McConnell, out of the money he spent, 67% of it went to media buys. Okay. He spent $6.6 million on fundraising, on having fundraising dinners. What is it? That means that they haven't gotten around to it yet, or it didn't fall into one of their major categories. But the FEC makes sure that they get receipts for everything. Okay? Strategy and research. That probably means you looked up dirt on your opponent. Yes? The Green Party? Hang on. What was his name? Hang on. It'll be under the presidential. Now, groups give money to these congressional races also. And let's look at the data or hang on here. Trump. They should have the other presidential candidates on here, but 2020. Here we go. And you'll see the third party candidates on here. It should, anyways. Jo Jorgensen, she raised a paltry $2.9 million. Justin Amash, who was a libertarian slash Democrat, they kind of got in the race. I don't see the Green Party on here. They may not have really spent anything, or maybe they just didn't have any money. These are all the Democratic primaries. And this is good too because, like Bernie Sanders, this shows you what he spent just in the primary election, $200 million, not even to get this party's nomination. Okay. Now, I want to show you one more thing here about people getting elected. Okay. When we look at a group, I'll show you this. Let's go back to Mitch McConnell for a second too. McConnell, the information about him, you can see it'll tell you which what we call political action committees give him money. And out of his campaign, out of his race, he got 1,100 contributions totaling $3.3 million from political groups or interest groups. Okay. And you can see that like agribusiness, farmers, communications, construction groups, they're all giving him money. And what we'll look at probably tomorrow a little bit, I'll show you, is how groups contribute to that as well.